He has been the best British talk show host for more than 20 years. Someone whose laughter could make even the worst live TV situations better, and whose humor could ease stress. Movie stars and music stars have sat on his red sofa, and his charm has miraculously broken up awkward silences. Norton is generally calm, but he hasn't liked every visitor. Some events hurt people so badly that they will never get better. Graham Norton, who is now 62 years old, finally says that some of the talks made him laugh and tested his seriousness, patience, and sense of humor. He names them because it's the truth, not because he's mad. Because there were nights when he couldn't wait for the end of the most famous talk show in the world. Charm wasn't always enough to keep the talk going. You can find some of Hollywood's most powerful and unstable stars on that list. Mark Wahlberg wrote the night chaos took the couch. 2013 was the best year for the Graham Norton Show. Millions of people watched this worldwide hit every weekend. Norton looked like he was going to win easily that night. Sarah Silverman, who is always ready to break the rules, Michael Fassbender, who is known for being professional and funny, and Mark Wahlberg, who is a Hollywood star known for being brave, funny, and bigger than life. However, no one, not even Graham Norton, thought that Wahlberg would ruin the whole show, making it a classic example of how to mess up live TV. When Wahlberg took the stage, something changed. The noise level went up when he strutted. His speech was a little slurred, and some of his jokes were too strong. At first, I thought it was funny. The people in the room laughed because they thought he was just feeling good. The mood went from being fun to awkward as the minutes went by, though. Wahlberg was both sober and drunk at the same time. He was not on time. There was a lot of talking going on because his jokes were making people mad, even Norton. Wahlberg would often talk over Fassbender and say something strange. He leaned across Sarah Silverman and yelled over her jokes while she told a story. What used to be fun quickly turned into something painful. You could feel the stress. Then someone in the crowd said, people didn't know whether to laugh or look away. Then something happened that everyone will remember forever. Wahlberg jumped to his feet quickly, stumbled a little, and then jumped right onto Graham Norton's lap. He put his arm around the host's shoulders and laughed while mumbling something I couldn't understand. In a club, they looked like old drinking friends. The crowd laughed in a strange way. Norton did an amazing job with it. Despite his anger, he kept his cool, smiled, and tried gently to get the talk back on track. But the worry was clear in his eyes. After the first episode of the show, social media went crazy. People who saw it said it was the strangest thing that had ever been shown on a talk show. A few people thought it was funny. According to some, it was hard to watch. Norton later said that the night had made him tired. He was no longer there. He had passed out. Later, Wahlberg made fun of it by saying that he had only had a few drinks before the show. But Norton didn't think that night was funny. This taught us that sometimes storms can't be stopped, even if the host is nice. Even though everything is falling apart right in front of your eyes, the show has to go on. The talk with Robert Duvall that didn't work out. Mark Wahlberg made a lot of noise, but Robert Duvall didn't say a word. People from all over the world tuned in to see the Oscar-winning actor on the Graham Norton Show, trying to get a unique look into the mind of a famous person. Norton got up and gave one of the hardest talks he had ever given. Though not many people knew about Duvall's guarded personality, no one thought it would get this bad. From the moment he sat down, he seemed detached, polite, and uneasy. His comments were careful and well thought out, and most of the time they were only a few words long. Norton did everything he could. That thing could be funny, silly, or even cute. It did not work out. While everyone was thinking, Norton smiled, sighed, and said, "This is hard work, Robert." This came after yet another short answer. People in the crowd laughed awkwardly. Duvall gave a small smile, and that was it. Norton was the only person who spoke for the rest of the part, and he tried to keep the tone light. However, he later said that it was tiring despite how calm he seemed. Duvall wasn't mean like some of the drunk or cocky guests. In general, he was rough. He wasn't trying to be rude. He just didn't feel comfortable in a place that was so casual and fun. Norton was full of life, and Duvall kept his cool. The talk turned into a game of chess. One person attacks with humor, while the other player stays quiet to protect themselves. No matter what, the event will always be remembered. People who watched saw a collision of worlds, not individuals. They were the talk show host who liked making new friends and the famous person who became famous by being mysterious. Norton thought about this later. When it's live TV, you have to make silence look fun, but it's fine if some guests don't want to talk. I learned to be patient during the whole Duvall situation. It also showed me that not all famous people are nice, and that not all legends like being famous. The dark side of Harvey Weinstein before the scandal. Harvey Weinstein was on the Graham Norton show a long time before his name became linked to shame. Also, the mood was already strange at that time. It took years for the public to learn the whole truth about the disgraced director. But after that night, Graham Norton would never be the same. Weinstein showed up as a force, loud, bossy, and well aware of how important he was, not as a friend. He took over the couch right from the start. He talked over other people, cut Norton off in the middle of a sentence, and turned almost every question back on himself. When Weinstein walked in, the show's usual friendliness went away. Norton kept trying to change the subject to something funny or playful, but Weinstein wouldn't let him. Instead, he would brag about how powerful and successful he was in Hollywood. Norton, who is usually calm, looked like he was having a bad day. He lost his polite smile as the talk went on, and everyone could see that something was wrong. It got harder to laugh, and as the stress rose, anxious laughter took its place. It was worse than a live TV wreck or incident in some ways. A steady, suffocating control changed the show's natural flow into something that couldn't be recognized. Norton wrote about that talk in a way that scared me years later, after Weinstein had died and been charged with many things that ended his career. He said in a low voice, "I didn't know at the time. But now that I look back, everything makes sense." He didn't say much more, but it was clear what he meant. I think that event, which seemed strange at the time, turned out to be more important. It was a sneak peek at the arrogance and cruelty that the world would finally see for itself. There are still people watching the movie, but not as many as there used to be. Fans don't like being made to watch it. For Graham Norton, it's a warning that bad things don't always really happen. It just walks onto the stage, tries to take over, and smiles for the cameras. Mickey Rourke, the night silence took over. Harvey Weinstein was too much like Mickey Rourke. Far away, it was quiet, and it looked almost like a ghost. Fans were hoping for a mix of strange charm and Hollywood sex when the star went on the Graham Norton show. Instead, they had one of the most uncomfortable and quiet talks in the history of the show. As soon as Rourke sat down on the red couch, it was clear that he didn't want to be there. His shoulders were slouched and his eyes were far away. His words were short, unclear, or didn't make sense. Graham Norton, who was famous for getting even the shyest people to talk, did everything he could to help him. He asked about movies, sports, and anything else that might get them talking. It did not work out. Norton got out of a fight at one point and made a joke about Rourke's dramatic return. Everyone in the room laughed except Rourke. He didn't look at her, just nodded. After that, the silence was too much to bear. Norton tried to fill the empty space with words and a smile, but each second was heavier than the last. One of the producers later said that they felt like they were talking to a wall. Not even Graham could save it. People who watched the show noticed how tired Norton looked. His words showed that it was one of the hardest talks he had ever had. He didn't want to be there. Norton talked about how you can't try to drive. The night wasn't hard because people were rude or angry. All you can do is try to make it through the silence. The trouble was that they couldn't connect. Rourke was not rude or mean. He was just thinking about things that weren't related to the show. What happened that night showed that not all disasters are caused by violence or chaos. Some people have nothing when they are born. When someone talks a lot, the worst thing that can happen is that the other person has nothing to say. A movie by Kevin Costner called When Charm Turned to Stone. When Kevin Costner showed up on the Graham Norton show, it wasn't a surprise. There were no fights, walkouts, or wild falls. But Graham Norton said it was one of the longest 30 minutes of his career. It wasn't a matter of ego or attitude. It has to do with tone. Film star Kevin Costner is known for playing sad and gloomy roles on screen. As he took the stage, it looked like he was going to a press conference instead of a party. It's always crazy and funny on Norton's talk show, with stories that mix up and moments that don't look like they were practiced. Price's answers to each question were calm and correct, and he often used the same expression he might have used in Dances with Wolves. Norton's couch is usually very warm, but it never was. The host tried to make him laugh by making jokes about bodyguards and his famous parts. When other people laughed, he was even told to join in. Costner smiled nicely, but he didn't always do what was asked of him. Norton said, "Some people just don't get what this show is," referring to the night before. "This isn't a pressed trip, it's just meant to be funny." It was pressed by someone. There was a big change in the beat. Norton made a joke, but Costner didn't answer right away. He listened to funny stories, like they were documentaries, when other people told them. The crowd could see a space. There wasn't any spark, but they were polite. Costner took things very seriously, which is great because he wasn't rude. He seemed calm and professional, which was different from how crazy the show was. Norton himself seems happy to be done by the end. "It's not that he was rude," he said later. "He just wasn't there." It stood out because it was the exact opposite of most of the people on Costner's show. It wasn't going off. It was peaceful, quiet, and just plain still. Norton learned that the hardest talks aren't always the most interesting ones, and that people you know well can keep you up at night. Those are the ones that never come true. The talk with Daryl Hannah that made him lose it. Graham Norton was angrier about the interview with Daryl Hannah than any other he has ever had to do. She wouldn't do what was asked of her, not because she was rude or cocky. The evening should have been simple. She was there to promote a movie or TV show. She played the lead role in both Blade Runner and Splash. Norton was always nice, and he greeted her warmly. He then asked her some light, friendly questions, but it was clear from her first answer that something was wrong. Her answer was just one word. She didn't answer, laugh, or say anything else. It was too quiet to breathe. Norton did everything he could to get away. It's good for you to laugh, understand, and even make fun of yourself. It did not work out. Even though she wasn't mad, she looked cold, like she would rather be somewhere else. The other people who came seemed unhappy. The crowd became antsy. It was hell for a host whose image depended on making guests feel at ease. Norton was very tired by the end of the session. He said, "It was unbearable." He also said, "I felt like I was dragging the conversation uphill with a rope." He skillfully took the audience's attention away from her by focusing on other guests to keep the energy up. After a while, he admitted that it was the only time he had really lost his anger. Inside, not outside. "You see how weak everything is when someone doesn't give you anything," he said. "Everyone has to want to go to the show for it to be an event." People who saw the tape can still clearly remember the tension, the awkward laughs, the polite smiles, and the sad silence. It showed that even the best host can't keep the talk going when one person stops being interested. Graham Norton learned that night how important it is to be humble. The man's charm had kept him from chaos, pride, and even scandal, but not from boredom. That was the worst thing he could stand. Graham Norton has seen and heard it all in almost 20 years of talks, laughs, and popular videos, from cold silences to loud chaos. But even though he had some bad times, he gave a talk that was full of kindness, humor, and friendship. The tough guests didn't fail. They made me remember that it's not always easy to control TV and life. Norton thought that every awkward pause and fake smile showed how rare real connection is. Because magic happens when people share something real, laugh, and talk. What do you think? Which one of these talks do you remember best? What's worse, Hannah's worry, Daryl Hannah's silence, or Mark Wahlberg's chaos? Leave a comment below.